The fluorescent lights of the bargain grocery store hummed a flat, indifferent note. I was paying for a single, modest vanilla cake, the $18.50 feeling like a small betrayal of my Spartan budget. The cashier, an older man in his late 60s named Harrison, his face a roadmap of long shifts and weary observations, suddenly took my arm. It wasn't a polite touch. It was a grip, his fingers digging into my thin coat with a desperate, shocking urgency. His eyes, a pale, watery blue, held an intensity that rooted me to the spot. My heart instantly kicked into a panicked rhythm. He leaned in, so close I could smell the stale coffee on his breath, and his whisper was a dry, rasping thing that cut through the store's cheerful background music. "Evelyn Reed," he hissed, having read the name on my rejected empty credit card just moments before. "You're Thomas's mother, aren't you?" I nodded, my throat tight. His words hit me like a physical blow, something about my son and his new family that left me completely paralyzed. "They're bleeding him dry," he whispered, his voice trembling with a strange, second-hand fury. "It's all a show. The poverty, the medical bills, it's a lie. I see them in here. I see what they buy when you're not here. I see the car they really drive. You have to open your eyes. They are conning him." He let go of my arm and abruptly returned to his duties, scanning the next item as if he hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of my life. The beep of the scanner was grotesquely normal. But I stood there, the receipt trembling in my hand, trying to process the poison that was now swirling in my head. A lie, a show, conning. I walked out the back entrance of the store, past the loading docks and the smell of soured milk. I needed air. I needed time to think. I fled to the alley, my heart pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I found a hiding spot, a humiliating nook behind a row of massive, rank-smelling trash dumpsters near the edge of the parking lot. From there, I could observe the front entrance without being seen. Was it possible that what this stranger had told me was true? Or was it just a cruel misunderstanding from someone who didn't really know our situation? If what I had heard was true, I would soon know it with my own eyes. My name is Evelyn Reed. I'm 69 years old, and all my life, I've worked to keep my small family together. I live alone in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment in Oak Haven, a small, perpetually damp coastal town in Washington. I survive on a pension that barely covers the basic bills, a threadbare existence. Every month, I count the dollars. A painful ritual of spreadsheets and wrinkled bills, always prioritizing the needs of others before my own. My only son, Thomas, my quiet, kind-hearted Tom, married Amelia 3 years ago. From the beginning, I found her to be a bit polished, distant, but I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, chalking it up to shyness or a different upbringing. Over time, however, I started to notice small, discordant things. A comment about a restaurant that seemed far too expensive, dismissed as a one-time gift from a friend. A new handbag that looked suspiciously high-end, explained away as an incredible thrift store find. I never said anything. I swallowed my doubts, desperate not to create conflict in my son's new marriage. Amelia's family, especially her father, Julian Croft, had always been impeccably cordial with me. But there was something in their eyes, a practiced sympathy, that never sat right with me. They were always talking about how difficult their financial situation was, how they struggled to make ends meet after Julian's company downsized. Without hesitation, I would try to help when I could, chipping in $20 here, $50 there, from my own meager emergency fund. I'd watch Tom, my good, hard-working son, take on extra shifts, the exhaustion settling under his eyes like a permanent bruise, just to send them money for their rent or urgent medical expenses. From my hiding spot, the smell of garbage thick in the autumn chill, I had a perfect view of the grocery store's main entrance. Tom was waiting for me in his beat-up sedan on the far side of the lot, but now I had a clear sight of everything. The cashier's words echoed in my mind. A show, a lie. Barely 2 minutes had passed when I saw something that made me doubt everything I thought I knew. Julian Croft, Amelia's father, walked out the main entrance. He wasn't carrying grocery bags. He was carrying 3 sleek, glossy black shopping bags from Vanguard's, the most exclusive, high-end department store in the city, a place I only knew by its intimidatingly elegant window displays. The store's name shimmered in gold on the bags he carried with a casual, swinging ease, as if it were a perfectly normal thing for him. My heart began to beat faster, a sick, heavy drum. Julian walked to a car parked just a few feet from where I was hiding. It wasn't the old, worn-out sedan they always complained about, the one that constantly needed repairs. It was a brand-new, gleaming silver Lexus SUV, a color that shone even under the muted, overcast sky. The tires looked new, and the paint didn't have a single scratch. I watched, frozen, as he opened the trunk and carefully placed the bags inside, like someone protecting something valuable. Then he took out a new iPhone and started talking to someone. Although I couldn't hear the conversation, his body language was utterly relaxed. He laughed, a deep, comfortable laugh, throwing his head back like a person with no urgent financial worries in the world. At that moment, I remembered all the times Amelia had called Tom, her voice a fragile, breaking thing, asking for help. It was always the same story. They couldn't make the rent. They needed help with Julian's experimental medical expenses. They couldn't afford enough food for the week. And my son, with his kind, porous heart, always found a way to send them something. But what I was seeing with my own eyes didn't match those stories of desperate need at all. The expensive bags, the new luxury car, Julian's relaxed, affluent demeanor. Everything seemed to completely contradict the version they had been telling us for months. A cold sensation began to spread through my body, a creeping dread. The cashier's words were starting to make a terrible, sickening sense. Could it be possible that my daughter-in-law's family had been lying to us this whole time? Julian ended his call and headed back towards the grocery store entrance. He seemed to be looking for something, or someone. His eyes scanned the parking lot carefully, as if to make sure no one had seen him. That cautious attitude seemed deeply suspicious. I decided to stay hidden a little longer. My gut told me there was more to discover. As I remained hidden, I began to remember how I had gotten to this point. That morning, I had woken up with a mix of excitement and nervousness. It had been months since I had been invited to their home, and I wanted to make a good impression. I went to my small kitchen and opened the chipped porcelain jar where I kept my cash savings. Counting those coins had become a painful ritual. I separated the wrinkled bills and coins I had been saving for weeks, sacrificing small pleasures like a hot coffee from the bakery or a new magazine. I had exactly $43.50. It wasn't much, but I had decided to use $20 of it to buy a decent cake. The rest I needed for my heart medication and some basic groceries for the next week. I showered with care and chose my best dress, a simple navy blue wool dress I saved for special occasions. I styled my hair, trying to hide the gray strands that were more noticeable every day, and put on the simple pearl earrings my late husband had given me so many years ago. Before leaving, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I saw a 9-year-old woman who had worked her whole life, who had raised her son alone after being widowed young, and who was now trying to keep a family together that seemed to value money more than feelings. Tom arrived to pick me up exactly on time. My son had always been punctual. When I got in his car, I noticed he seemed a little tense, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Hey, Mom, you look nice," he'd said, though his smile didn't reach his tired eyes. During the ride, we talked about unimportant things. He told me about his office job, about some minor problems he'd had with his boss, but he avoided talking about Amelia or her family. That seemed strange, as he normally kept me informed. When we arrived at the area where Amelia's family lived, I asked him to stop at the grocery store. I wanted to buy a fresh cake. "I'll go in with you," he offered, but I told him I preferred to go alone, that I wouldn't be long. The bakery inside the grocery store had several cakes. I chose a simple vanilla cake. It cost $18.50. I had budgeted $20, so I was pleased. It was in the checkout line that everything happened. The cashier, Harrison, served me normally until he saw the name on the credit card I tried to use first, knowing it would be rejected. It was a reflex, a habit from a life where I once had credit. The card was declined, as I expected. Then I took out the cash. It was at that moment that the man looked at me more closely, his eyes narrowing. "Evelyn Reed," he'd whispered, reading the name on the card again. "Are you Thomas Reed's mother?" When I confirmed that I was, his expression changed completely. He looked worried, almost scared. What he told me after grabbing my arm was something I would never be able to forget. His words were direct and painful. He told me that Amelia's family came to that grocery store regularly, spending hundreds of dollars on imported products and premium meats. He explained that he knew the situation because he'd overheard Julian mentioning with a certain pride how his generous son-in-law helped them financially every month. Harrison told me he had seen Julian buy bottles of wine that cost more than I spent on food for a whole week. He also told me that Amelia frequently bought expensive beauty products and designer magazines, always paying in cash. He said it seemed monstrously unfair that a family who gave themselves those luxuries was taking advantage of the generosity of a hard-working son and his elderly mother. The man explained that he had decided to talk to me because he had seen me carefully counting my coins to pay for a simple cake while they spent without a care. He told me that his own mother had gone through a similar situation and that he regretted not having acted in time. After hearing this, I left the grocery store, my mind a vortex of confusion. And that's why I decided to hide and observe. I needed to see with my own eyes. From my hiding spot behind the dumpsters, the smell of rotting vegetables thickened my throat. I saw Julian come out of the grocery store again, this time with a smaller bag. He headed back to his car, but this time he stopped to talk to a man who was washing a car near his. I couldn't hear the conversation, but they both seemed relaxed. After a few minutes, I saw Julian hand the man something. From my distance, it looked like money, several bills that he handed over without apparent effort. At that moment, my phone vibrated. It was a text message from Tom. "Mom? Everything okay? You're taking a long time." I had completely forgotten about him. I quickly replied that I was on my way out, that I had been in a very long line. A lie. Lying to my own son hurt, but I needed more time. As I was writing the message, Julian got into his car. The engine started with a smooth, powerful purr. I watched him leave the parking lot with a tranquility that completely contrasted with the image of desperation his family had been projecting. I decided to leave my hiding place. I needed to act normally, at least for now. But my mind was already working, trying to recall all the strange details I had overlooked. When I got to the car, Tom looked at me with concern. "Mom, are you okay?" "You look pale," he said as I settled into the passenger seat. "Just the line, son," I replied, my voice thin. "You know how grocery stores are on weekends." But inside, my heart was still hammering. Tom started the car, and we began heading to Amelia's family's house. During the ride, I tried to keep up a normal conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. "How's Julian's job search been lately?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Last time I spoke to Amelia, she said things were very difficult for him." Tom sighed, his grip tightening on the wheel. "Yeah, Mom. Amelia told me her dad had to reduce his work hours at his part-time gig because his illness is acting up. That's why we've been helping them a little more these past few months." That information didn't match at all the relaxed and prosperous attitude I had observed. "And how do you feel about that, son?" I asked, watching his expression. "I know you've been working a lot of extra hours." "Well, Mom, they're my family now," Tom replied, his voice laced with tiredness and resignation. "Amelia is my wife, and when you get married, you also marry into the family. If they need help, it's my duty to help them." His words broke my heart. My son, the kind and hardworking man I had raised, was sacrificing his own well-being for people who were, I now suspected, taking advantage of his generosity. We arrived at the neighborhood where Amelia's family lived. It was a pleasant residential area with well-maintained houses. It was definitely not a place where people living in extreme financial difficulties would reside. As Tom looked for a place to park, I got a better look at their house. It was a 2-story building with a well-decorated front lawn and a facade that had been recently painted. "The house looks very well kept," I commented. "Didn't you tell me they were having trouble paying for some repairs?" "Oh, yeah. Tom replied as he parked. Julian managed to get some extra consulting work on weekends to make the most urgent repairs. He's been working a lot. Another story that didn't add up. We got out of the car. Before we could ring the doorbell, the door opened and Amelia appeared with a radiant smile. My first impression was one of total shock. Her appearance was completely transformed. She was wearing a dress that was definitely not cheap. The fabric looked to be of excellent quality. Her shoes were clearly new, and her handbag matched the outfit perfectly. But what struck me most was her hair and makeup. She had a professional cut and highlights that shimmered. Her makeup was flawless. "Evelyn, what a joy to see you," Amelia exclaimed, coming in for a hug. As she embraced me, I could smell her perfume, a costly fragrance I recognized from department store counters, a scent equivalent to my entire weekly food budget. "Hello, Amelia," I managed to say, trying to hide my shock. "You look great. That dress is beautiful." "This old thing?" she replied with a laugh that seemed a little forced. "I bought it on a clearance sale months ago. You know how it is." That explanation sounded exactly like the convenient justifications I'd been hearing for years. We went into the house. The living room had been recently redecorated. There was a new, expensive-looking leather sofa, a glass coffee table, and several decorative objects that were definitely not cheap. On the wall was a large, flat-screen TV that hadn't been there before. "Dad, look who came to visit," Amelia called. Julian appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel. When he saw me, his expression changed slightly. There was a flicker in his eyes, as if he had seen a ghost, but he quickly regained his usual smile. "Evelyn, so good to see you. We hope you're hungry." It was the same Julian I had seen at the grocery store, but now he was acting as if he hadn't left the house all day. "I brought a cake," I said, handing him the box. "What a lovely gesture," Amelia exclaimed. But it wasn't necessary. As she spoke, I could see over her shoulder into the kitchen. The counters were full of ingredients, expensive cuts of meat, fresh and exotic vegetables, bottles of imported seasonings. The quality was noticeably superior to anything I could afford. "We wanted to do something special for your visit," Julian replied. "Besides, we got some ingredients on sale. The miraculous sales again." Tom seemed completely oblivious, chatting animatedly with Amelia. But I could no longer ignore the evidence. During lunch, I tried to maintain a normal conversation while discreetly observing every detail. The table was set with new dinnerware. The food was abundant. Julian poured wine into crystal glasses, a wine I recognized from having seen its price at the grocery store more than $50 a bottle. "This wine is delicious," I commented. "Oh, this one?" Julian replied with a proud smile. "A friend of mine who works in imports got it for me at a special price. Normally, we couldn't afford wines like this. There was always a perfect explanation." While we ate, Amelia casually mentioned plans for a family celebration they were organizing, an event that, as she described it, would require a considerable investment. "Sounds expensive," I said. "Expensive?" Amelia laughed. "Well, we've been saving. Besides, Julian got an extra job that will help cover the expenses." "What kind of extra job did you get, Julian?" I asked directly. For a moment, I saw an expression of discomfort cross his face. "Ah, just some weekend consulting," he replied vaguely. "Nothing too exciting." After lunch, Julian offered to show me the improvements they had made to the house. In the master bedroom, I saw something that caught my attention. On top of the dresser were several shopping bags from expensive stores, some still unopened. The price tags I managed to glimpse showed numbers that seemed exorbitant. "Amelia went shopping recently?" I asked. "Ah, that," Julian replied with a nervous laugh. "She found some incredible clearance sales. Sometimes it's better to buy things when they're on sale." That logic seemed completely contradictory. As we returned to the living room, my phone rang. A text message from Harrison, the cashier. He had sent me a photo. The image showed a grocery receipt from just 2 days earlier. The total was over $400. The list included premium products, imported meats, fresh seafood, expensive wines. The name on the receipt was clearly Julian Croft. Along with the photo was a message. Mrs. Reed, I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should see this. This receipt is from 2 days ago. Your family needs to know the truth. My heart hammered. The evidence was there, in black and white. Are you feeling okay, Mom? Tom asked me, noticing my expression. Just a little tired, I lied. When we finally said goodbye, my mind was made up. I couldn't let this farce continue. The drive back home was one of the most difficult of my life. Tom was whistling, relaxed. Mom, he said, I'm so glad to see you get along so well with Amelia's family. I know you had some reservations, but I think now you can see what good people they are. His words were a knife in my heart. Tom, I began carefully, have you ever noticed anything inconsistent in the stories Amelia tells you about their financial situation? He glanced at me. What do you mean, Mom? Inconsistent? Well, I continued, today I noticed they have a lot of new things. The television, the sofa, Amelia's clothes. That all costs a considerable amount of money. Tom sighed, his defensiveness rising. Mom, I already explained that Julian has been getting extra jobs. Besides, Amelia is very good at finding deals. Not everything that looks new is necessarily expensive. But don't you think it's strange that a family that needs constant help for basic expenses can afford so many luxuries at the same time? They're not luxuries, Mom, he replied, his voice rising. They're basic needs they've been able to meet thanks to a lot of effort. The TV was secondhand. The furniture was a one-time opportunity. Each justification was a perfect echo of what I had heard from them. Son, I tried again. Have you ever seen any receipts or documents that confirm these incredible deals? The question made him uncomfortable. Mom, why all these questions? Amelia is my wife. If she tells me she got something on sale, I believe her. Marriage is based on trust. Of course, son, I replied softly. Trust is fundamental, but it's also important to protect yourself from people who might take advantage of that trust. Are you insinuating that Amelia and her family are deceiving me? Tom asked, now clearly annoyed. Mom, that's a very serious accusation. I'm not accusing anyone, I said, retreating. I'm just expressing some concerns. The rest of the trip passed in tense silence. When we arrived at my apartment, his goodbye hug was cold. Mom, he said before leaving, I hope you can give Amelia's family a chance. They're good people. That night, alone in my small apartment, I sat in my favorite armchair. I had the circumstantial evidence, the neighbor's gossip I'd overheard, my own observations, and the damning photo of the $400 receipt. But I had a son who was completely blinded by love and a sense of duty. I needed more. I needed proof so irrefutable that even Tom couldn't deny or rationalize it. I decided I would not confront him again until I had it. I would begin my own discreet investigation. The following days were agony. Every interaction with Tom was an exercise in self-control. During that week, I received 3 more messages from Harrison. Each contained more proof. He sent photos of other receipts, all showing excessive spending. One, for over $600, included 2 bottles of French champagne costing more than $100 each. The date on that receipt was the exact same day Amelia had called Tom, crying, asking for urgent help to pay the rent. I also received a call from Beatrice, one of the women I had heard at the store. She had gotten my number from a mutual friend, Evelyn. She told me, my daughter lives on the same block as them. She says delivery trucks with expensive furniture and appliances are constantly arriving. It's not normal for a family in a crisis. The moment came on a Wednesday night when Tom came to visit. He looked exhausted. What's wrong? I asked. Amelia just called, he explained, rubbing his temples. Julian needs a minor surgery. The insurance doesn't cover all of it, and they need $2,000 by Friday. I've been working double shifts all week, but I'm still short. That was the last straw. Tom, I said, taking his hands, I need to show you something, and I am doing this because I love you, and I cannot stand by and watch you be hurt anymore. I took out my phone. I showed him the first photo of the $400 receipt. His eyes widened. Before he could speak, I showed him the $600 receipt for champagne, dated the same day she'd asked for rent. "Mom, where did you get this?" he asked, his voice shaking. I explained everything. My encounter with Harrison, the conversations I'd overheard, my observations during our visit. "But there has to be an explanation," Tom insisted, though his voice was weak. "Maybe Leonard had a good month at work." "Son," I replied gently, "these luxury purchases were made on the same days Amelia called you, asking for help with basic expenses. Doesn't that seem like too much of a coincidence?" I could see the realization starting to sink in. "But why?" he finally asked, his voice completely defeated. "Why would Amelia lie to me?" "Because it worked," I replied honestly. "Because you've been sending them money regularly without asking questions. For them, you're a reliable source of income to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't otherwise afford." Tears formed in my son's eyes. "How much money? How much have I given them?" he asked, afraid of the answer. "According to what you've told me," I said, my own voice breaking, "over the past few months alone. Probably more than $5,000, and that's not counting the help I've given them myself." The number hit him like a physical punch. $5,000. Months of extra work, sacrificed for lies. "I need to talk to Amelia," he said finally, his voice hard. "I need to confront her. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I asked. "Once you put this on the table, there's no turning back." He looked at the photos on my phone, his face a mask of pain and hardening resolve. "Mom," he said, "thank you for showing me this. I needed to know the truth." He left my apartment with a determination I hadn't seen in him for months. I stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, my heart aching for him. At 2:00 the morning, my phone rang. It was Tom. His voice was hollow, shattered. "Mom," he said, "you were right. About everything. It's so much worse than we thought. What happened, son?" When I got home, I looked through her things, something I've never done, in her purse, hidden in a zippered compartment. I found a notebook. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a diary, Mom. It was a ledger. A ledger. He told me she had written down every dollar she'd ever asked me for over the past 3 years. Every lie, every invented emergency, documented like a business account. "And what else?" I whispered, fearing the answer. "Plans?" Tom choked out. "Plans to ask for more." She had a note for next month. Tom's yearly bonus. Ask for $3,000 for Dad's new experimental treatment. She had notes on how to make me feel guilty if I hesitated. The cold, a sociopathic calculation of it all, sickened me. When I confronted her, Tom continued, his voice dead. She tried to deny it. She said it was just keeping track of household expenses. But when I showed her the photos you had, she changed. How? She got furious. She screamed at me that I had no right to go through her things, that my family had never accepted her, that it was all your fault for putting ideas in my head, that you were a meddling, jealous old woman trying to destroy our marriage. The accusations hurt, but they were the predictable script of a cornered manipulator. But the worst part, Mom, the worst part was when she finally admitted it. She told me her family was never in a crisis, that Julian has a stable, well-paying job, that it had all been a strategy to take advantage of my generosity. She used that word, advantage? Exactly that word. She said I was easy to convince and that my family had money we could afford to share, as if we were responsible for funding their luxuries. He had called Julian during the argument, putting him on speakerphone. At first, Julian tried to stick to the story, but when Tom told him he knew the truth, he finally admitted it. "And what did Julian say?" I asked. He said they had decided from the beginning that I was a good match for Amelia because I had a stable job and a family that could help them. He told me it was never personal, just business, as if that made it okay. "And Amelia?" "That," Tom said with a bitter, broken laugh, "was the most revealing part. She got mad at her father. Not for lying. She got mad at him for ruining the plan. She was furious that he confessed and ruined her ability to keep deceiving me. Oh, son, "It's over, Mom. I told her tonight. Our marriage is over. There's no way to rebuild trust after this. Tomorrow, I'm starting the divorce proceedings." The months that followed were a landscape of emotional and legal wreckage. Tom moved into a small apartment. I supported him as he navigated the grief, not of a lost love, but of a love that had never been real. The divorce process revealed even more. Amelia had been hiding significant assets. She had a secret bank account where she'd deposited much of the money Tom had given her. The lawyers calculated the total theft at over $40,000 across 3 years. Amelia and her family tried to contact me. Julian called, pleading, promising to return the money. "Leonard," I told him, "you had 3 years to be honest. You chose lies. Now you have to live with the consequences." Amelia herself showed up at my apartment one afternoon, unannounced. She was dressed in simple clothes, no makeup, her eyes wide and tearful, a performance of repentance. "Evelyn," she said, her voice catching, "I know we made mistakes, but I really did love Tom. It all just got out of control." "Amelia," I replied, my voice calm and cold, "real love doesn't include a ledger. It doesn't include systematic lies and calculated manipulation. What you did wasn't love. It was exploitation." Her face changed. The mask of the victim fell away, replaced by a cold fury. "I always knew you were the problem," she spat. "He would have been happy if you hadn't meddled." "Maybe," I replied, opening the door for her to leave. "But he would have been happy while being deceived. I prefer him to be temporarily unhappy, but free." After that, they disappeared. Beatrice told me they moved out of the neighborhood, likely to find a new town, a new target. It's been 2 years since that day at the grocery store. Tom's recovery was gradual. He learned to differentiate kindness from naivete. He learned that generosity must be paired with wisdom. 6 months ago, he married again. His new wife, Clara, is a kind, hardworking, and transparent woman. The first time she came to my house, she brought ingredients for us to cook together. "Evelyn," she said, "I want you to know I will never ask you or Tom for money. I believe in working for what I need." Her honesty was like a balm on an old wound. Last month, they told me they are expecting their first child, a granddaughter. I still see Harrison at the grocery store. We nod, a silent acknowledgement. He was the stranger who lit the first match. "You know," he told me one day, "my mother, she lost everything. No one had the courage to tell her. Some truths hurt, Evelyn, but silence kills." I learned that true family love isn't just about comfort and support. Sometimes it is a fierce, painful, and necessary act of protection. It is the courage to face the ugly truth, to hold the light steady, and to shield the ones you love from the predators who disguise themselves as family. True strength is not in avoiding conflict to keep a false peace, but in having the courage to shatter that peace to save a life.